Hey guys, in this podcast I chatted with Evan Royalty and Stephen Hancock, creators of SCP Overlord. Evan is a longtime YouTuber who first started out making machinimas and then moved up to creating short films for SCP and video game related material. Stephen Hancock also started out machinima and now works as a cinematographer and the director in the film industry. If you enjoyed the podcast, please help us out by following us or reviewing us if you're on Apple Podcast. Also, spreading the word is a big help. The more you support me means more time that I get to put into the podcast. Thanks guys, enjoy.
Don't forget, today is pizza day, so head on down to the cafeteria to grab yourself a hot slice.
So, first of all, congrats guys. Pretty huge undertaking you guys did.
Feels good, man.
Thanks. Yeah, it's finally over.
Yeah, man. How do you feel in general? Are you guys happy with the end product? I'm sure there's nitpicks, of course, but
I feel about the same after every single thing I've done. You know, there's like, you're happy with the reception, but you as the person who made it are like, well, if we could have done it different, we'd have gone back and done this different and this different, but you sort of just have to like suck it up. That's usually how it feels every time.
I've been having a lot of shower thoughts lately where I was like, man, I wish I would have done this. Like, I mean, spoiler warning.
Yeah.
I'm hoping everyone watches it before they watch this. But like the upstairs scene when they ice Pender in the hallway, like I was driving home one day and I was thinking like, man, you know, it would have been cool to get like a shot of them like putting him in like a body bag, or even a scene where whenever they're about to go into the basement, like them putting their nods down. Just it's like there's little details like that were kind of that were overlooked because we were so crunched for time. But
yeah,
I mean,
you know what it's like? It's like when you get into an argument, you're driving away, and you're like, I should have said that.
actually, that's exactly what it's like.
Why didn't I say that?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It sucks, but you know, I mean, like we've completely obliterated Dollhouse's record, so I am totally fine with that. Like we've gotten almost the same amount of comments that video got in a year. We're about to blast through 1 million views in 4 days, and it took
That was
almost
a quarter
4
of the
months.
pixel count.
Yeah, like, and it's a 30-minute video. Most people don't want to sit through a 30-minute video, so that's another thing that I think is pretty cool, is that people actually took the time to sit and watch it and were entertained from start to finish. And an overwhelming amount of praise from a lot of service members as well, that we got
sick.
A lot of the tactical stuff done correctly, which was good. I mean, like, you know, little nitpicks here and there, but I mean, with what we had to work with,
It's inevitable.
yeah,
By the way.
yeah. But with what we had to work with, like most of them were pretty satisfied, and you know, I'm okay with that.
Like I will say, like I was worried because like one of the big worries I had from the script was like, okay, well, I know I want it to feel like, oh, you're there from the beginning of an operation, like you're there from the start and you're with them. And so I was like, okay, well, I want the briefing to be there because, like, I don't know, I feel like so many people were confused by the nature of Dollhouse and the way it was formatted, because it was just sort of like, boom, you're in. And it's like, you sort of have to figure it all out as they go along. And I wanted it to be a lot more like, hey, here's what's going on, and then we can build off that. But like, dude, info dumps are dangerous, and anybody who knows anything about writing knows that it's generally a bad idea to start your script with literally just somebody giving exposition for however long, which in this case was, I think, about 2 minutes of just exposition. So making that exciting was not particularly easy. And anybody who read the script brought up the fact that it was not a good idea to just give an info dump at the beginning and like, hey, are there ways we can shorten this? And it's like, I tried. And there were a couple lines that did get trimmed, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, like a lot of non-film people that had seen it, especially at the premiere, actually were all pretty, like they all told me that that it was tense from start to finish, like even through the briefing scene, like because like the way the briefing was, that the way Evan paced it and the way that the music kind of just carried you through it, a lot of people told me that, like, yeah, I was just like grabbing onto my seat the whole time, which I was like, cool. I mean, like, for now, of course, you know, like what Evan said, like for like film people, you know, like it's like, oh, you not really and generally not a good idea to put like a lot of exposition at the beginning, but if you can make it exciting, then usually people stick with it.
There was an idea that we had for an edit, which we didn't end up going with, obviously, where it was like, I guess this is just food for thought, but like one of the things that we thought of was like we would start it with the scene of the hole, and like Klinsky going up to the hole and dropping the glow stick or whatever, and then they would have their dialogue, and then as soon as they walk off into the fog, we would cut back to the briefing scene, because then that would sort of be the hook instead. And we never tried that edit, so I don't know how good it would have been, but it's just an idea.
I forgot about that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, like almost like a false start, where you're jumping ahead in the story, then jumping back. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
because like now that I think about it, that might be something I'll like, because I had that in mind for another script that I want to do. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get a chance to do it next time.
It's just one of those things where with this one, I did want to play it safe. I think a little bit too much to an extent, because it's like, all right, we got a lot of money on the line and we got to deliver 100%. So like trying to be as linear as possible, because you know like how, you know, normies are, like, you know, they'll, if you show them anything different, they'll, you know, complain about it. So it's trying to please everyone, and then once we get past, you know, that hurdle, then we can just do whatever we want. And people will just
That's
like
the
watch,
thing, actually.
people will just
I'm
watch
actually-
it without question.
I'm actually less worried about the normies in that regard. From like, if it's different, they'll go, oh, I don't like it. I think that like if you can generally get it to feel like a movie, the normies won't care.
Yeah.
I think like
That's okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. That's fair.
I think that like the film people would get bothered.
Yeah.
If like your edit wasn't airtight.
Yeah, I feel like YouTube is relatively forgiving with things like that in general.
Like that was the thing with Dollhouse, was like lots of people are like really, especially like entry-level filmmakers get really involved
Yeah.
with like style. Like it's got to be super stylish. And it's like, dude, just how about you make it look like a movie first, and then we'll talk about style.
Like,
So like Dollhouse was like, let's just make it look like a movie, and then
yeah.
everything else is secondary.
Was it? Well, you guys mentioned earlier about budget. I'm just curious. Is this like the biggest project you guys have like led, like a creative
Yeah.
project? Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, it's since our background is mostly in, you know, making video game movies and working with voice talent. It's just like it's the same thing. You're just working with people, but on a much larger scale. So I was kind of already in my element. The only difference was it was just a lot of people to manage, and I was wearing a lot of hats. Like I was in charge of like all the wardrobe. Like I had to make.
God.
I had to outfit all the operators after we did the designs for their weapons and their masks. I painted all the masks, all the guns. Had to make custom VPUs. Those VPUs on the front of their masks are PVC filters or couplers and drain strainers. Like they're not real.
Didn't we go through like a bunch of different like ideas of like how we were you
Yeah.
get them to be attached to the mask?
Yeah, and I just ended up hot gluing them.
Yeah, we just said fuck it and hot glued them, which
Yeah.
really worried me because I was like, man,
But I
glue.
Yeah, like I was prepped on set though. Like I had like the glue gun. I had like paint, because like paint was you can see it in some scenes, but the paint does chip off a little bit on it, and you can see some of the white. So I was carrying around like paint and a brush with me at all times to like fill it in. I missed it a couple times, but you know, whatever. But also had to make like all the cultist masks. Like I sewed all those by hand.
Oh wow.
Like all of those are made by hand.
they look literally nothing like the doodles I did, by the way. They just look like masks.
Yeah,
Because we
like-
started with one idea, and then we started doing something else, and it became something completely different. Which, whatever.
Yeah,
I think
it
they
was,
look fine.
Yeah, it was for the delivery. People were pretty satisfied with them, like audience reaction wise. And most of the other like cool stuff, like the effigy, that was all done by our production designer Corey Hinesley, and she also made the peel and stick graphics that were on the wall that the camera could see.
Yeah.
Fucking brilliant. It was all like vinyl stuff. You just peel it off, stick it on. They're about 1 foot by foot wide. Same with the mat that Pender was sitting on. So at least that was off my plate, but I had to manage a lot of stuff, and we were moving at light speed the entire time because we had 5 days and 200 shots to get within those 5 days.
God.
Yeah, it was bad.
It's ridiculous.
It was an extended cocaine binge.
Yeah, I was like, we had a guy show up late. Well, actually, no, he showed up to replace our key grip because our key grip could only be there for 2 days. And our military advisor, he's like setting up the guys in front of the house for that drone shot where we see them approaching it. And this random dude just comes walking down the sidewalk. And this is like, I think day 3, if I'm not mistaken. And I've been drinking those Bang energy drinks. And if anyone has ever had those, like it wires you really quick. So like I stopped the set, like, who the fuck is that or whatever, you know, because like we're on a hot set, there's a bunch of like heavily armed dudes, and there's
Fight or flight instincts immediately flare out.
Yeah, and like I'm all wide-eyed, my hair is like a mess and greasy because I had really long hair at that time, and I'm just like, this is my first impression of this guy, is that I just look like a coked out dude just shouting at people. So that kind of gives you an idea as to like the level of intensity of how we were kind of running things.
For the audience's like perspective, since they're probably not super familiar with film stuff, can you tell them just like what a normal film day would normally be compared to like what you guys are doing, like the amount of shots and things like that?
Usually, one, you have time and money. That's really what it boils down to. When you have those two things together, it's usually pretty smooth. We had a shot list and everything. Like, we had everything organized. It was just we fell behind the first day by a couple hours because of a wardrobe issue, and that's what created problems.
On the camera.
Yeah, and for some reason the recording monitors we were using, their firmware was messed up and was reading our wireless transmitters as additional monitors, so we couldn't get picture in Video Village. So my first AC couldn't pull focus, so we had to rely on. Yeah, we were originally going to shoot this on the Nikon Z6 because it had a 10-bit signal, but its autofocus in video is terrible. So we decided to switch over to the Sony A7 III because it had facial recognition and eye recognition, so it would keep our subjects in focus, and I wouldn't have to worry about it.
Wow.
Because we didn't have a focus puller the entire movie.
even with masks on, it was still able to recognize like eyes and. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, it was insane. If we had people, like if we had actual like actors delivering lines and not doing dubs, I'm pretty sure this probably would have been something that would have taken maybe a 2-week time frame.
Okay, so that's a fair point.
And that would have cost definitely like 3 times the amount of money.
Probably wouldn't have been too dissimilar from an episode of TV.
Yeah. Because, and like another thing too about this is that since we were moving so quick and we had such limited time, I wasn't able to do all of like the cool lighting stuff that I wanted to do. So most of this movie is all shot in natural light, for the exception of like 4 scenes.
So it was mainly just a time thing. That's why you guys did that.
Yeah, that's really it. Yep. They like our budget was $23,000, and literally 80% of that went to locations, and then catering and VFX. All the crew worked for free. Like they volunteered.
Wow.
And they were
awesome.
like, yeah, that's cool. Because most of them, they all worked on Dollhouse, so they knew they weren't wasting their time, you know. So, and some of that money also went to paying for the materials for, you know, the effigy and all that. Like that effigy shot cost us $1,000.
Yeah. So actually, speaking about that, I mean, I was shocked that you guys did that, like for real. But B, how did you guys go about that?
It's not even plot relevant. It just looks cool.
Yeah.
Oh, really? You just made it up?
I literally came up with it when I was like, so where that begins is like kind of funny, I guess, but like, as a writer, I think you need tools for brainstorming, and one of my tools is video games. Whenever I'm finished like a large chunk of work, I usually play a video game, and it has to be a video game that inspires me. I think the last one that I played was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which, God, that's such a good game, even if it's busted as hell. And like, one of the ones that I like to play the most if we're like planning out something like Overlord is, I think I played Ghost Recon Wildlands, which isn't a great game or anything, but it's sort of like, I could just sort of walk around in that space and just think about shit. And I remember like, there's a photo mode in it where you can just like, detach the camera and go take pictures of stuff. And I'd like shot down a helicopter and there was the fire in the background. And there was just like a windmill or something in the background as well. And it had that sort of rural aesthetic that we were doing for Overlord. And I was like, man, what if we got a shot like that for Overlord? And then I just sort of tried to figure out an excuse to get a shot like that in Overlord. And then that led to the effigy, and we were like, okay, well, what's the effigy gonna be? And I'm like, okay, well, we sort of had to retrofit it. And I think the effigy was Steven's idea, like the actual look of it.
Yeah, because what I had to work with was the triangle and the Venn diagram, like the 3 circles. So I had this thought that since the anomaly at the end was the tentacles holding people, and I kind of thought, like, what if it was you had the triangle on top of this one single plane, which is like our reality, and then underneath it you had all of these spokes coming off, and they're all like all these little stick people are kind of hanging off, and that just kind of is a little bit like a subtle like foreshadowing to the end on how they're floating.
Okay.
And originally I was like, oh yeah, let's just use dowel rods. And then when I took it to my production designer, she's like, well, so how big do you want this to be? I'm like, let's make it like 12 feet tall and 10 feet wide. Like, this thing was gigantic. God. Like, it doesn't look that big on camera, but it was huge in person. and she was like, okay. And she built it like out of like, there were 2x4s, like 2 of them like put together. Like it was a thick effigy, and she made it in I think it was 4 pieces, and everything was like pre-drilled and everything, so all we had to do was just take lag bolts and just assemble it.
Okay. Yeah.
And we put it together in like 30 minutes, and then we wrapped it in burlap, soaked it in diesel the day before, came back the next day, hosed it down with diesel again, and then kerosene, and then because kerosene for the accelerant, because diesel has a very low flash point.
Don't use gasoline.
Yeah, do not use gasoline. And we had a firefighter consult us for this.
Potential pyrotechnic filmmakers, dude, just don't fucking use gasoline. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
I've seen gasoline explode before because somebody wanted to use it to accelerate a fire, and it literally exploded, and it wasn't that much gasoline.
Yeah.
So just don't do it.
Because diesel, it's the liquid that's flammable, not the fumes like gasoline. And
okay.
When we had Basan, the character Basan, his real name's John. He's actually a firefighter and an EMT, and we were asking questions prior to shooting, like, hey, what if we mix diesel and kerosene for the accelerant, and then diesel for it to burn hot and long? And he's like, yeah, that would work. And I said, great. And it was kept it isolated, the whole area. We raked all the dead grass out of the way, and we had the whole area like we wet it down, because there was this little pond right next to it. So we made sure that area was completely wet, and then we lit it with a blowtorch. Took like seconds, and then our pyrotechnics guy ran out of the way, and then
It's so fast that you can see it actually still trying to like subsume the effigy. Like you can see it like clearly in an early burn in the shot because it just went so quick.
Wow.
Yeah. And
some people noticed that.
What I think it's kind of cool though, because it kind of shows like how they like could have just have missed Pender lighting the effigy as he was like would be like running back. So I was okay with that. And the what else was there? Yeah, and it was like a 40-second shot, and then everyone showed up with fire extinguishers and put it out, and that was it. one shot.
Oh wow, no
retakes.
retakes.
There's only one digital enhancement with it, which is the embers.
Yeah.
Clay did.
Mm-hmm.
I had a feeling because I was like, those embers look too perfect.
Yeah, but they're pretty though.
They're nice. Yeah.
They were too perfect for you.
Because like, I hate being a pain in the ass, like backseat director. But when I saw the shot, I was like, man, we need to add some more shit in the frame. And I hate saying that because everybody's like, bro, just shut the fuck up. Shut up.
Because I remember I sent it like because our buddy Chad was there. He was there doing BTS and like just assisting me with personal stuff. And he sent the shot to Evan, and then the feedback I get is, I don't like it. We're like, all right, well, this is what we have. Sorry.
So like,
to be fair, he sent me one still, and it was like a bit awkward.
Okay, it's just because the way it was
he didn't tell me
freeze framed
that.
or something.
Right.
I didn't actually see it in motion.
Okay, all right. He didn't specify that.
That's fair. So you guys, we kind of touched on this really briefly, but Were there like specific things because of the coronavirus pandemic that like really slowed things down, or like really unique hurdles you kind of faced because of that?
So we were supposed to shoot in March.
Yeah.
And everyone was freaking out. My argument was that like that was when cases were pretty much non-existent in the United States. And like we had people that already had their plane tickets ready to go, and I was trying to tell everyone like we need to like do this now before there are more cases, because nothing's happening right now. And most of my crew backed out, and I was like, screw it, like we'll have to.
Yeah, there was really no argument we could make that would change their minds.
Right. And it was like ironically, most of the crew nowadays are just kind of like over it, and they're like,
dude, like there was something about like there was this incredible hysteria that sort of took over everybody in March.
Yeah.
Like towards the end of March, people just went insane.
Yeah.
Like there was this idea that like the next person you touch is going to give you the virus, and it was like,
right.
It overcame the entire psyche of the country.
And I wasn't like my claims weren't baseless either. Like I was watching the numbers. Like I wasn't just gonna blindly go like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put you all in harm's way. It's like no, like I had the number, like the case numbers in front of me and everything, and I'm like, look, like there aren't. Like,
my argument was like, look,
and,
this right now is the safest you're ever gonna be. So pushing it back to summer isn't gonna make you any safer.
Right. But people were scared, and I was like, you know what, fine. Like we'll push it back, and we'll see what happens to see if things kind of like let up and whatnot. And then June came around, and things, well, as you already know, were worse.
Yeah.
And I basically just kind of came to them and I said, listen, if we're going to do this, we need to do this now. And you're with me or you're not. Because like I'll just go do it myself. It was basically one of those, which I know sounds like a kind of dickish, but it was. We were under a lot of pressure at this point, and we made sure the set we had from my knowledge, like everyone was tested and no one had anything, and we had hand sanitizer all over the set and everything, so if people wanted to wash their hands, they could. The talent was wearing masks like 90% of the time. As you can obviously see in the movie, everyone's wearing masks. So and the crew had their own separate place to stay. I stayed with the cast at the shooting location. But everything was managed pretty well. Like no one got sick. So I think we handled it pretty well. Even though most of us were kind of savages. Like we're like ready to rough it, ready to go, ready to get it done. But yeah, it was definitely like decision time at that point to kind of just make the call like, all right, are we going to do this or not? Now, it did work out in our favor to some extent. The unfortunate thing was that most of the cast was wearing like early spring clothing and not summer clothing. It was fucking miserable, dude. Like,
you want to know why everybody's masks were fogged up to shit? It's because they're not legit gas masks, and like holy fuck, bro, it was insanely hot.
Yeah, we want like the original look. We wanted to go for like, which we kind of achieved it. Like was like mainly like browns and reds, you know, kind of like that fall look. I was basing most of the cinematography off of the look of 1917. That nice dense fog and everything, and cloudy weather.
I'm gonna bring that up because like part of like the entire aesthetic for the cinematography was like really centered around let's do it in early spring when all the like trees are brown, and we'll get that nice sort of like that really awesome sort of horror feel that we could get out of that. And so I was really worried that it was gonna really destroy the look of it by like going to summer, and the saving grace of course being that, well, a little fog goes a long way, I'll just say. Yeah. And by little fog, I mean a lot of fog.
Hold for fog.
A considerable amount of fog.
Yeah, there's a lot of fog continuity errors between a couple shots at the beginning, which I don't care. Like I do know like that opening sequence, like we were going through really quick because we were burning daylight. But that definitely helped out, and it turned out all right. It worked out too because a few of our cast members had some personal stuff come up in March, so it actually worked out pretty well. We also had more time to flesh out the look of the characters, and we also got a couple additional sponsors as well. Mechanics Gloves being one of them, so that was cool.
Did they just give you
one
free
of the
base?
thing is like whenever you're like sort of through it, everything's sort of like trivial in retrospect because like obviously the fear is past. But I tell you what, man, the levels of anxiety were unbelievable. Like it felt like, because whenever you do any kind of filmmaking, it's about minimizing as much chaos as you can so that you can have as much control as possible.
Yeah.
But it felt like everything in the world was just conspiring to make as much disorder as possible. Even right up until like a few days before, it was like, oh, the biggest riots in American history happened. It's like, great, fuck it, you know, that too, just throw that on the list. Great.
Yeah, like it was like I try to be a reasonable person, but with this, like with what Evan said, it's like everything was being thrown at us, which I know kind of sounds a little self-centered. It's like, oh, the world doesn't revolve around us, like obviously, but I also don't. I don't. Like,
well, I was I was like, man, if we could have had a pandemic, could you have done it like next year or something?
Yeah, right. Like, but I don't like losing. And it doesn't matter what it is. And I was so asphyxiated on like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get it done, and it's gonna be fucking awesome. And I don't care what gets in my way. It was kind of like my whole outlook on it. And a lot of the people that were involved too, that were on set, like we had a pretty modest crew. Like I think we only had, like, for most of the days we had 2 grips. I had 2 ACs, 1 assistant director, script supervisor, and that was really it.
Yeah, wow.
And a
Which
PA,
isn't
and
unusual.
And a PA. Like it was a skeleton crew, but like we only had 4 people for Dollhouse, but Dollhouse was all in one location.
Well,
But I mean, 2 locations, but you know, it was a little bit more not this scale. But
yeah,
with
you're
it,
much out of the elements.
yeah, and with this, like, we didn't have cell service where we were.
Oh wow.
So we actually had no idea like what was going on in the world either. Like we within those 5 days, something could have happened and we would have had no idea. But you know, we got it done because after that it was just all right, cool, back to isolation and just put my face on my screen for 4 months, which is exactly what we did.
I just think it's insane how long post-production took as well. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like that was like it legit wrapped like early in June. It was like done, and then I remember when you got back, you started cutting it like almost as soon as you came back.
Yep.
I've made this analogy before, and it's not a perfect analogy, but it certainly encapsulates the feeling. And it's like filmmaking is you spend like 1 or 2 weeks just making a mess, and then you spend the next 2 to 3 months cleaning it up. Like that's literally what it was.
Yeah. Like we even had like some missing. There was a couple shot, like there was missing coverage that I didn't even realize. Like when Lambert gets his throat opened in the on the second floor.
Yeah.
That whole shot was actually supposed to be done in 1 take, but we didn't have enough pressure in the blood tube that was rigged in his Camelback and his plate carrier. So the blood wasn't shooting out the way it should have, so we had to digitally enhance it, and I had to add the shot, the close-up of him holding his neck and the blood shooting through it. But with all that going on, I didn't get a single of Cicero, which I wish I had, because then we could have extended the shot a little bit more, because the shot when he looks over, that shot is like super wide. Like I was pushing the 4K file to its limits. Like that, like I think I punched in like to where basically the image is HD at that point.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
just to kind of make it work. Yeah, like there was a lot of you know, editing black magic fuckery that we had to do to make sure that
Anybody
it
who
flowed
like
well.
gets up their ass about resolution at all costs has never actually worked before. Because like, dude, if you've ever seen like actual feature films and TV shows, like they crop all the time.
Oh yeah.
I noticed like some crops in fucking Band of Brothers.
Most films too are delivered in 2K.
Yeah.
So it's
So, speaking of post production, what would you say was like the most time consuming out of everything? Like that ate up a lot of time, because for a lot of people here, they don't really know all the steps of post-production and like actually what happens.
Let me see. So let's see. We wrapped in June. Okay, so July. That's 2, 3. So we were picture locked by August. So
Okay.
sound began mid-August. So from mid-August to now, I would say sound took like 3.5 months
Wow.
or so. Yeah, something like that.
Was that especially because of like the fact you had to dub over everything and stuff like that?
No, it was. There was just like I mean, yes and no. We had on-set recorded sound, like not while we were rolling, because that would have been impossible. But like we went back and we got like more Foley and stuff. We actually borrowed most of our assets from Dollhouse for a lot of the stuff.
Oh, that's convenient.
But I guess I'll let Evan take this one since he and Dan did most of that.
Well, it's just detail work, because like once you like, there's things that sort of don't occur to you until you've placed a sound effect. Like you don't even pay attention to certain things until one sound effect gets put in. Like as soon as one gets put in, then it calls attention to the things where there are not sound effects, and then you just like end up having to stack detail after detail after detail. And it's incredibly time-consuming work, because not only do you have to like, because placing a sound effect isn't literally, it's not just putting something into a timeline. It's matching it to the spot in the video, to the movement, making sure that it's a good sample, and then you have to audio locate it, which is a combination of volume, panning, and reverb. Then like you might even have to layer it as well, because like the gunshots as well were like, that's like 3 or 4 layers per shot, plus shells, and plus the actual mechanics in the gun, which are also part of that. Like after that, you've spent like a considerable amount of time on that one thing, and it's just that's most of what you're doing. There's very few like, and you can't get lazy, otherwise like you really notice. So you have to put that amount of effort in every single frickin' thing that's in the project file. That's really it, man. It just takes forever. Then you have to do like a mix and make sure everything sounds good in the master project, which by that time you've got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tracks. Everything takes forever to load and export, and it's just pure tedium.
That was you and Dan, right? The music?
Yep. For anyone who doesn't know, the sound was a partnership between myself and another guy named After Infinity, also known as Dan. And he sort of did like a ton of demos, like I think almost a dozen demo tracks, and then broke those up into samples. And then I would sort of go through them sometimes and take like a sample out and then build a song off of that. I did that for stuff like one track early on, and then a few different tracks later in the runtime, because I did all the music in the second half except for the very end is all me, and all the music in the beginning is Dan. And the reason that was partitioned that way is because Dan is a much more experienced musician, and like, so those were the most important tracks to get right, so I figured I would give those to him. And whereas everything in the second half I knew was just going to be score elements, and I could do that easily because that's what I did in Dollhouse. I guess if there was any one thing that I did consciously, it was that like, if you do any kind of filmmaking, you can't do it in a bubble. You always have to do it consciously aware of every other film that's already been made. And one of the things about that is completely true is that the audience has an instinct for what you're doing already. And this is especially true with horror. I'm sure everybody knows about the sort of patterns that exist in horror scenes, where it's like you have your tense music, then the tense music dies down, and then you have your dramatic moment. And it's like an audience is extremely attuned to that language. And so I didn't want to do that. So I basically did it backwards. So you'll like my initial version when they're going upstairs and they first see the guy in the camera was like, okay, well I could have cut the audio on that wide shot cut the music on the wide shot where they're just walking up to the door, and then had like a dramatic riff whenever you see the movement in the camera. But the audience would have already been in the mode of like, oh, something's gonna happen. And I didn't want to do that. This is a reoccurring thing in Overlord, is like, instead of going to no sound and then suddenly introducing a sound, it's usually having your tense music and then cutting it suddenly, because the audience is completely like, there's fewer people that are tuned to that language. because that's quite unfamiliar and quite unusual in horror. So I think it makes a lot more. It's a lot more shocking when something does happen, because the audience isn't really, they're not in that mode yet. So when you introduce it, it's a lot more unexpected.
To piggyback on that, where the audience is kind of like, the average audience is already like used to certain horror elements like jump scares. One of the most common comment that I've been seeing is a lot of people appreciated it for being creepy, scary, and thrilling without the need to have jump scares in it. Because I don't think there aren't any jump scares in this at all.
I'd say there's sudden and shocking things at points, but
yeah.
I wouldn't classify them at all as jump scares.
Yeah, like nothing where it's going to be like some really loud like drone out of nowhere.
Yeah, it doesn't like take up the entire mix.
Right. And I think if you're able to, keep your audience tense without having to do that, I think if anyone can do that, like you've succeeded at making a pretty decent horror flick.
What you're supposed to do is just make the audience not know what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
Because you need to show them that you're willing to do a lot, and you just need to make them know, like, okay, they're willing to do anything. And then you just have to sort of have to go against their instincts, where the point where they stop trying to predict what you're going to do.
Do you have like specific films that kind of helped you with that?
None for this. I don't think I can think of a direct film like that I cited for this in terms of like the way it was paced. I'm sure there's like a couple things for a couple different parts, but like not really that I can think of.
As far as like the look goes, most of my inspiration was mainly for camera movement, was studying some stuff from 1917. And as far as the overall look goes, since most of it was natural light, was most of Roger Deakins' work. I really like studying his work, particularly No Country for Old Men. Is probably one of my favorite films, like just dramas in general, and also like one of my favorite ones that he's ever shot, because of just how relatable a lot of the settings look. And that's something that I really tried to do with this, is to try to keep it as grounded as possible. Like, I mean, the plot itself is really absurd. Like, there's a lot of absurd things that
it's completely ridiculous.
But like, it's like trying to translate. It's like, all right, how do you take something that's so, like, I don't want to say stupid, but like kind of
absurd.
It's absurd. It's goofy, and then keep it grounded where you can sit there and go like, this seems real, and
well, it's contrast. The thing that I wanted from the start with like every single SCP thing that I did from like forever ago was like the ridiculous shit was meant to contrast the realistic stuff.
Yeah, like, because I wanted people who are going to be watching it to kind of like, whenever you see them like walk into a room, like if someone has a room that looks similar to it, I want someone to go like, oh, that kind of looks like my living room,
Okay.
So then
cool.
You could, I mean, not to be too far up my own ass, but like if someone's like walking around their house and kind of like, I want them to be reminded of certain scenes from this, if they were able to, create any direct correlation to the setting, to their own personal, like either their property or home or whatever. And I think doing that, like keeping it grounded and relatable to people, I think will only kind of heighten, the suspense and the fear as they're watching it.
That's sort of the thing, by the way, and I've been thinking about this a lot, not as much lately, because I've already sort of come to my conclusions about it. But like, there's sort of an almost debate, I'll say, in film, and specifically in writing. But I think you can extend it to a lot of things. Of like, is film supposed to be realistic? And a lot of writers would straight up say no, and to some extent I agree with them. Where I disagree is there was a particular writer who I admire who said that you're not supposed to write characters that are supposed to talk like people, because you might as well make a documentary. And to some extent I agree from what he's trying to do, because he writes films that are like, they take place in the real world. So what you're supposed to be making exciting, which is what you're supposed to do for film, it's supposed to be exciting. So his goal would be to make exciting characters, and those people ought not to be realistic, because they're supposed to stand out. But for something like this, I think that the realistic stuff, like, I think it helps to make the characters somewhat realistic and have very lifelike dialogue, simply because it's, like I said, meant to contrast the ridiculous things. So the things that are the dream elements of film exist exterior from the characters. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Because I do agree that I think film is like almost like it's a pocket universe. It's a dream, and you sort of have to, I think, respect that it is that.
Like, and trying to also like not go too over stylized, something that I kind of try to make my trademark, I guess, for lack of better words, because it's like,
Well, like I've been thinking about that a lot too, because like I
hate source lighting. Like it annoys it annoys the shit out of me, especially in like day for night scenes where it's like there's clear, like, I mean, it works.
Watch any Tarantino movie, you'll just see source lighting everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like it works. It works depending on like if you have your own pre-existing canon with your stuff. Like Tarantino, like all of his stories apparently take place in the same universe, and they all have a pretty much like a pretty consistent style to it. So it's like, okay, when you look at it, it's like it's a Tarantino movie, whatever. Yeah. But with like I try to, with me trying to keep it as grounded as possible, like I don't want some like obvious, like whenever you're in a room and it's dark, right? And you have like, okay, you have your lamps and your practical lights, and there's just this random like above light coming from nowhere. You ever notice that, like in movies, it's like, where the hell is this source, like this light coming from?
Yeah, I remember seeing a really egregious example of that. I can give one right now.
I hate it.
I was watching a Guy Ritchie movie, and like some character walks in, turns on the fucking lights, and you can see like there's this big light fixture in the middle of the room, and it's in the middle of the fucking frame. And above that, you can see light coming down on top of it, and you're just like, oh come on.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
come on.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, because it's like, and even with, I mean. With the basement scene, it's obvious that we had to use lights for it because we didn't have a low light camera at our disposal. Well, we did, but I didn't know it was there. We didn't have one at our disposal, otherwise I would have tried to make it look like ambient darkness, like Dollhouse. Okay. So we just opted to go for like, we're gonna have to do stylized lighting, kind of like a little bit of 0 dark 30, but not that dark, which I think with that context, I'm willing to like take shit for that. But for like even like exterior scenes when like the background's completely black, but there's like this one source of light coming from the trees, it's like, oh cool, well there's an 1800 watt lamp over there just blasting through, no big deal. Which, yeah, again, like it's a stylistic choice. It's not one that I like. I don't like source lighting, so trying to go the the natural look to try just to refer back after this giant tangent to try to keep it as grounded as possible is something that I like to do while attempting to translate whatever it is that Evan gives me.
Well, I want to make a point because this is something that's sort of really been on my mind, and like I remember we briefly touched on like the mentality you should have if you're going to develop a style. And there are some directors where it's like you see their movies and you instantly recognize that that's them, and like it's almost their brand and it's central to them. This has been something that I've really been thinking about, and it's I think like how would you define like the nature of like the goals of art? James, how would you say that like what is it supposed to be?
I feel like it's so like differs on so many people. I mean, I guess if
I know that's
really
an extremely
basic,
loaded question, but like I'll give you a commonly accepted sort of version of it, which is that it's a form of self-expression. Do you find that disagreeable at all?
Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of art that people just use the self-expression as an excuse. I feel like it has to communicate something, and if the audience isn't able to receive that message, you failed. Like that.
Sure, but I think that's technique.
Well, okay, yeah. So, okay, because I also realized there's certain audiences that would never understand it, and there's certain audiences that would understand it. So I guess that's also knowing your target audience.
Okay. Well, I am getting more alienated with the idea of art being exclusively self-expression, because I actually don't think that it should be. Because, like I was saying before, when you make anything, it's always going to exist in proximity to other works of art. It can't be self-contained. It's always going to exist within the meta structures of art. So, like, you can't sort of disconnect from that and really have a lot of success in art. So you have to be consciously aware of it. And I think that whenever it comes to the questions of style, you could say, oh, well, it's self-expression, but it's like, I think what you're doing is that I will say, it is always a self-expression of interest. Art is invariably, you're expressing interest. You can't get away from that. But for certain stylistic choices, I think that it is about the duty that you have to the craft that it should be about. Because whenever you're going to make a stylistic choice, it always has to be in service of the story. Yeah, if it doesn't do that, then what's the point? Mm-hmm. In the end, I think that like the mentality that at least I'm sort of moving towards is like, I don't want to like get a ridiculous ego. I don't want to make, because if it's about self-expression, then everything you're doing is just about you. And it's like, well, you're probably not that great. You're probably just as flawed as everybody else. And so it's like, okay, well, what is it about? And to me, it's about like, well, what can I do to honor the craft that I'm working? I know this seems so fucking high-minded for somebody who hasn't really done anything that important yet, but it's something I've been thinking about. Because I think that if you can at least, I don't know, do what you think would be better for the craft as a whole instead of for your own brand and for your own ego, I think it's generally better for everybody, and you don't sort of risk getting all the way up your own ass, which is something that I worry about. Yeah, because you don't want to get too certain of yourself, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of artists and directors end up really starting to suck when they really think they've made it and they're great and they're the hottest shit, and then.
Well, I don't want to sort of psychoanalyze every director.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm just
I
throwing
sort of haven't
examples.
done it, so
I do think it's very
important
important
to get ahead of myself.
To stay grounded, though, in general, regardless of what you're doing, like even for your own mental health.
Like my whole thing too is like I've always been overly critical of my own stuff, so it doesn't matter like at what point that I'm at. I'm always gonna just think it's like, nah, my stuff's not good, and it's like it's never enough for me. So
I was just saying that could have been better.
Yeah, like it's always there's no it's completely impossible to master filmmaking, and the reason why is because the technology is changing like every 6 months. There's always something new, and there's always a technique that's going to come out, and there's always going to be a different style that people do, and it's and since like everyone's like on the visual side anyways, everyone has their own spin to however it is that they do stuff. So it's like you're like, okay, well, some people like Tarantino's like cinematography, some people like Michael Bay's cinematography or Christopher Nolan's.
I remember there was a joke that I was told when I was younger. It was like, how many photographers does it take to install a light bulb? And it's like 5. One person to install it and 4 people to talk about how they would have done it.
Right. Yeah, because it's there's not really like there is a right way to do it. Like you do need to know how to how to light, and you need to know composition.
There's a million right ways to do it, but there's also a million wrong ways to do it, is how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like once you know all the rules and stuff, then you can start implementing your own spin on it, and then you know when to break the rules. So it's a giant contradiction, and it's really annoying and makes 0 sense until you start doing it, and then you kind of go, oh, okay. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of shit that I still don't know.
That's a really important point to get to, actually. Is like, when people hear, oh, there's rules to it, they go, oh, come on, it's art, there shouldn't be any fucking rules. And it's like, well, they can be broken, it's just that you have to sort of respect the rules first before you can actually break them correctly. Mm-hmm. Because, like, early on in a lot of my terrible machinimas, I was breaking the rules, but I didn't fucking understand any of the rules, so, like, it was terrible. Right. I was doing it completely wrong for so many years, and it's like, my shit just looked terrible, and none of it worked, none of the editing worked, and it was like, well, it's because I didn't respect the rules first before I broke them. And there's just certain things about the way people intake media that, like, you just have to take into account.
Yeah, it's like you have to It's like you gotta you have to be thinking of every single detail at all times while also disregarding them. Like it makes zero sense until you start doing it and you fail a lot and it's all trial and error at the end of the day. Like there's no, because like I've had people like ask me on Instagram after Overlord came out, they're like, oh, like how did you get to where you are? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. It's like I just made video game movies and all of this was just convenient. Like because Evan, like I was talking to him about it a couple days ago and he said like if you watch any interview with any filmmaker, all of their where they got to where they are is all unique to them. There's no
yeah, it's all completely unique. There's no one size fits all like journey into any kind of industry like this.
The only thing I could say is that you just have to want it. Like that's it. Like you have to be so like elitist to your own content. Like in the sense of like you have to be so critical of your stuff where you have to, even as you're doing it or whenever you complete like a shoot, like you have to know like, all right, well here are the mistakes and now I know what not to do.
Well, I think a better way to put that would be like you don't settle.
Never settle ever. Like it's like for me it's never not enough.
Because like the moment you settle, like and it's like that's death.
Yeah. So I feel like you have other questions you'd want to ask, though. I feel like we've been on this topic for a while.
Yeah, no, you got me thinking a lot now. But moving on, what was it like working with Clay? He seemed to have a really pretty big role.
It was very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty seamless, to be honest, because there were we actually added a lot of shots. From the original one. I mean, and of course, you know, we paid him for it. Like, it was one of those things where we already had a pre-existing VFX budget, and we'd ask him, like, hey, like, can you do this? Like, do you have time to do this? And he'd be like, yeah. I'm like, cool. How much would you charge? And he would give us a number, be like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And it was, like, the turnover time was, like, what, 24 hours, and we'd have, like, a shot.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it was... The workflow was pretty quick. I think we kind of got most of the VFX placed within I want to say 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, all the important shots we got pretty quick.
And then like after that, like while we were picture locked and Evan and Dan were starting to, you know, get prepping for sound, it was just after that it was just fine tuning. It's like, hey, can we adjust this? Can we adjust that? But with It was kind of convenient too because he has his own fan base because of 096, and both of our fan bases have like they've been calling for us to do a collaboration, so it kind of worked out pretty well.
Probably isn't the level of collaboration that was being asked for, but it is still a certain amount of collaboration.
Yeah, like it was just like with him already being familiar with the universe that we're working with, he was kind of already invested in it. Like he was excited for it before.
He also already knew us, so which is nice.
Yeah, and he was already excited for the project even before we approached him for it. And when it was like, hey, are you free? You want to do this? He's like, yeah. And it was kind of convenient because he was also transitioning to freelance.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, cool. So you have a bunch of time. Great. And it was, like zero complaints. I would definitely work with him again. It was whenever there was like, if there was an issue with a shot, I'd be like, hey, can you fix this? It was like immediate. He'd be like, yeah, I'll get on that right now. So I was pretty satisfied with a lot of what we got, especially, okay, so fun fact, the scene where they find the missing posters. So they're actually in the background and off to the right of the screen. Like if you go back to that shot, off to the right of the screen, there are 2 trees in the background. The posters on those trees, and there are 2 posters way far in the back in the woods. Those were digitally added by Clay.
Oh, cool.
Because the original, in the original shot, like Evan was like, man, I wish we had more. I tried different tracking software to try to get them on there, and I couldn't do it. So I think it was maybe
I felt I was really bugging people because that shot really, really bothered me.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have the effect that I wanted, which was it's punched in quite a bit. So like the effect is like, you don't want it to come across as, okay, there's a couple of missing posters over here. You want it to make it seem like there's probably more off to the side of the frame. So if they're not encompassing the entire frame, it doesn't get the effect across like quite the way you'd want it. And I thought I was gonna have to settle, but yeah, Clay hooked us up.
Yeah, like it was like maybe 5 days before we were supposed to like have a final render for the premiere. And I texted Clay. I was like, "Hey, could you see if you could put some posters on here? Like, do you have time to do that?" He's like, "Yeah, I can do it tonight." I'm like, "All right." And then he sends it to me.
He just nails it.
Perfect. I mean, well, there was a roto error that he fixed like immediately after I pointed it out. But like, other than that, like the track was fucking flawless, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what did you use? He's like, oh, I use Mocha. I'm like, I use Mocha too. How the hell did you do that? He's like, oh man, you just gotta know how to finesse it. I'm like, that doesn't tell me anything.
That means nothing to me.
But okay.
Well, he's been doing, where people don't know, he's been doing VFX for years. Like, this is his full-time job for years. So
I was a little salty because I was like, oh man, I really do suck. Because I did some of the minor stuff, like the cultist when you see him through the camera for the first time in the doorway. Like I mean I was just using the puppeteering thing in After Effects. I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was winging it. Be like, yeah, it looks cool, great. And even the first shot when they go into the room and then they see the guy by the window in the drapes and he moves out of the way, that shot. Like
we went through a bunch of different versions of that one.
None of that is real. That's actually all one giant stitched panoramic image.
Oh wow, sick.
And it's because it's deep fried and it looks like dog shit.
Helps.
That's why you don't notice. So I added like lens distortion to it. So whenever there's a digital pan, you see the lens distortion. And that image of him moving was actually a recycled version of the hallway scene on the first floor where the cultist is on the ceiling. I just used that same clip of him on against the blue screen, and then I used the puppeteering in After Effects to just kind of move him to the side. So it was all the whole shot was completely fabricated, and everyone bought it. So I was like, cool. I mean, until now, people are gonna go back and go, oh, I
was just thinking,
or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, I got you anyway. So
well, that's the nature of VFX. Yeah. People don't see it if they're not looking for it.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff. We actually had to reshoot some stuff too, like the.
Oh boy, did we ever!
Like the opening scene, the shots of the two Foundation agents. Those were reshoots. There were the reversals and close-ups of the guys. Like most of them were actually all shot on location. The montage sequence we added later. We shot at a later date. The hangar scene that was part of the briefing montage was added at a later date. And the the cultist walking into the doorway. We drove 3 hours back to set to get that shot, and then I got. Yep, got the hallway shot of the ceiling where you see the smoke move when it runs across the fucking ceiling.
I was so happy.
We drove 3 hours to spend 40 minutes back on the set, and then we left just to get the shots.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, worth it. Great, we got it.
But isn't it a nice shot?
Yeah, no, yeah, it is.
It's so necessary to the edit.
The funny thing is that ceiling shot is the one that caused the most amount of issues because there was like a bunch of tracking problems with it. But then we nailed it. Like we eventually got it. But it turned out really nice.
Did you guys use like tracking marks and stuff, or like?
I had blue X's like tape on the ceiling and on the walls and stuff, and then obviously Clay painted them out. But for some reason the tracking software wouldn't find them, so he had to do it by hand.
Yeah. Okay. So one tangent: most tracking software fucking sucks with markers. It's a pet peeve of mine. You basically have to use like infrared reflectors. Those are the only thing that like kind of work.
Yeah, they did that with the Irishman, and I thought that was kind of an interesting technique.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna get into that. Yeah. That's a Mr. Clay kind of discussion.
ILM is king.
Well, okay, so
that's the other thing. There was.
Oh, wait, what's up?
Well, I was just gonna mention like there was, like. You can plan the shit out of your movie, but there are so many emergent things that are going to occur that are going to completely change your ideas, and you have to roll with the punches. So, like, we didn't get a shot of the mortar's landing at all. We just didn't. So,
oh, yeah.
Like, and it wasn't in the script that there was going to be one. It was going to be some oneer where like it's looking out the window and then you see the mortars landing, and then it was going to pull back as the guys are moving downstairs, and it was going to be sort of swift because we could do it with a fog machine. It would be easy. We could use sound effects. Bada bing. But that didn't happen.
So that's another shot that's completely constructed in post. So we actually used a shot 3 times in this. So the first time, whenever we cut to outside and we see Vaz's character, the TL of the Intercordon, the security team outside, and the camera pans to the left, and then we see the house. Mm-hmm. So we used that shot 3 different times. That was the first time, and then the shot where it slightly moves, pans to the right, was just reversed, and then that's when we see the guy, when we cut away, gets pulled into the trees. But I used that same shot. I took a frame of him where we were on him, and then I put it into Photoshop, and I used the content aware fill and cropped him out, and then stitched it with the shot, a static shot of the house whenever the camera pans over, so we could see the trees moving and all that kind of stuff. And then I put it together into one widescreen shot. And then when I sent it to Clay, I'm like, all right, man, add mortars and stuff, but make sure you do it on the right side of the screen as quickly as possible, because there's a lot of discrepancies that I need to hide behind the smoke. And then I did a digital pan to the left, and it worked out pretty good. But yeah, that whole shot was completely fabricated as well.
Wow.
And it worked. Like, it definitely, and adding in the drone shots before that, where they're calling in the artillery, was just the recycled drone shot from the beginning when they're approaching the house. I just used the shot from earlier on before they entered the frame, and then just did some different keyframing animations and stuff just to kind of add room for dialogue and everything. And it definitely paced it out pretty well. It set it up to go into the final act of the film, and I'm pretty happy that we went that route.
I just want to be rich enough to not have to solve these kinds of problems ever again.
Yeah.
It's just like winging it, man. That's what I normally do. It's what we kind of do, and it's just like, oh man, we're screwed. And it's like, oh wait, no, we can fix it.
900 IQ idea.
Yeah, out of nowhere. And it's definitely like when you're doing like when you're doing your own independent stuff, like it's a lot of guerrilla tactics you have to do. It's a lot of problem solving on the fly, and if you can do that, then I mean you can pretty much do anything, because then all that BS that you had to deal with on this film will carry over to the next film. So you're like, oh, I know what to do now, or something similar to it.
Okay, so it actually reminds me, were there specific lessons you learned from Dollhouse that carried over to this?
Don't make it dark.
Yeah.
And people on YouTube don't like anything that's dark.
Yeah.
Everybody watches their shit on their phones.
The only thing that I had to do was just try to not cannibalize my cinematography. So, like the raid sequence, I didn't do the same. I tried to not do the same thing that I did last time, where like you see them go into all the rooms and blah blah and all that kind of stuff. Like I wanted to do a long take, just so you can see them all go in and do their thing and whatnot. But tried my best to not repeat stuff, so people just don't go, oh, Overlord is just Dollhouse with a budget.
Yeah.
Which you could argue kind of is, but that was one thing that I didn't want to do, because otherwise I'm not going to learn from that. I would say probably one of the biggest things is this is carried over from literally every film that I've done the past 3 years, is just plan for more time than needed. Like I wish I would have just went out of pocket and booked this location for an additional day.
What we wouldn't fucking give for like another day or two.
Yeah. So I'm definitely gonna I say this every time, but I definitely know for the next one we're gonna take way more time in pre-production and really overshoot like the amount of days that we're gonna take to shoot it, just so we have more than not,
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of owe it to yourself every time you make something to do an autopsy afterwards, to be more efficient next time, not make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah. But
because I'll give you one right now straight off. Is like my ability to communicate the script was incredibly weak, and I need to work on it next time. I felt like I failed in a lot of ways, as a screenwriter, and I need to remedy that next time. Because like there were certain lines that didn't come across, certain ways that like I wanted it to be blocked to get the performances across that didn't register. I didn't do my work, and I need to do that next time.
Is that specifically like how you wrote the actions and things like that, or just the dialogue?
Well, just like where the characters position, what they're doing in a conversation, and like certain actions like could have been communicated better and weren't. So
Okay.
Yeah, like the scene in the woods when Kalinsky and Cicero walk back to the group, like that. Apparently, the rest of the group, for the exception of Kalinsky, should have been more in a line, and all of them looking at Kalinsky.
Because if you listen to the dialogue, it's like Kalinsky isn't. He's not given equal attention within the group to everybody else. It's everybody's focused on him and what he thinks about the situation. So it should be like them across from him looking at him, and not in a circle, because it's about like, they're interested specifically in what he thinks about the situation. And so it would have been easier and probably more efficient to just shoot them across from him, and then you can have the TL come in next to Kalinsky, like from his like single. And if you wanted to cut to a wide after that, fine. But like you don't sort of end up with a lot of the problems that the scene has, which is the sort of awkward reverse shot between him and Bassan that occurs that could have been remedied, but like whatever. Just put it in the script next time.
Like, because Evan was supposed to be there, but they shut the borders down, so he wasn't able to make it.
They sure did.
Oh,
They're
that's why.
still closed, by the way.
Yeah, because he was supposed to be here to
Just dating this video.
to kind of like what is it? Like be like, hey, like this is how this is where they need to be placed, and be like, oh, okay, and then go from there. But I mean, for the next one, what we're just gonna do is that, like, luckily, the guy that played Jansen, Corey Haynes, is actually an artist, and he also does storyboards. So I was like,
What? I didn't know this.
Oh, I didn't tell you that? Yeah, he does storyboarding and shit. So I asked him like, hey, I want you to help us storyboard the next one. He's like, all right. So we're definitely gonna like use storyboards next time. I usually have a shot list, like, I mean, down to like the type of lens that I'm gonna use and like the description of the shot. But having a storyboard will definitely help, because then if we can look at it and go, no, we need to add a shot in here or whatever.
Plus, you can run the storyboard through an edit to see if it cuts well.
Right, like do an animatic.
You can do that. Yeah,
that's good.
Which one of my buddies has countless times told me that I need to do that, but I've just been too lazy to do it, and it's bit me in the ass a couple times. But you live and you learn. So here we are. But definitely with the next one, we'll hopefully if we secure enough funding, we'll be able to really go the whole mile, like really really go balls deep.
Well, so I guess you kind of are already alluding that. Do you have any specific plans after this?
To not.
Yes, but I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can't really give too many details about it.
You gotta wait, folks. No worries.
Yeah.
Are you guys just kind of?
I'll say this. We have plans, and we've had plans for a while, even like predating Overlord, of another SCP film that would be like the sort of last one we would do for YouTube. And it's going to be developed, but it's going to be a little while because we have to do something first before we do that. So once that's out of the way, I can sort of go back and like finish that script, which is a pain in the ass. One of the hardest scripts I've ever had to fucking write.
But it's cool.
Cool, yeah, that's
we'll
exciting.
see.
It's gonna cost so much money.
Well, I'm sure
That's gonna cost a couple bucks.
Overlord's really got the word out about you guys. So far, it seems that way, at least.
Yeah, it would seem so. Like, it's probably gonna go past 1 million today.
Yeah, we're at 967,000, still going.
Nice. We're recording this in November for people listening and wondering. Okay, so you briefly mentioned this. I was listening to your Q&A stream. I think Steven mentioned this, that you guys are actually premiering at a, was it the Tampa Film Festival?
Yeah, so the Tampa Bay Underground Film Festival, it got accepted to that. I was talking to Reggie, who runs the venue, and he was telling me that it's probably going to be just like a digital type thing, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, if it was going to be in person, I was going to be there, but that's just not gonna happen, unfortunately. But I have a lot of friends in film down there in Florida and some parts of Atlanta, and usually we try to make the effort to submit our stuff to there as much as we can, because one, it's fun, two, it's it's a nice little competition. So
Yeah. Do you guys ever plan on doing an actual physical theatrical release, like just like a small little thing for like locals or anything, or not?
Well, Steven?
well, I mean, eventually, yeah, like I want to make blockbuster films. I mean, we're probably gonna
Wait, no, James, were you
I was saying
asking
for Overlord,
specifically
yeah.
about a screening for Overlord?
Yeah, it's like a little thing.
Oh, well, yeah, we already did that. We did
okay,
it
cool.
last Wednesday on the 11th. We had a screening for locals and the cast and crew, and we actually sold out, which was cool.
Awesome.
And good reception overall. A lot, like everyone there liked it. So, and we had a few veterans in the audience too that commented on some of the accuracy. One of them was like, "You got it 90% correct," and I was like, "All right, I'll take it."
That's not bad at all.
I'm cool with that.
Sick.
Closest I can think of, and I've mentioned this a lot, is like, whenever you know something and you watch a film about it, and you could just tell if they just, like, whoever wrote it just literally didn't know anything. What, as an audience member, if like I say I watch a historical film, if I can tell that they put in like most of the effort and it's mostly good, I'm generally happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you at least tried. What pisses me off is when they don't try. So like, I'm willing to settle for, okay, at least I tried and I got it like mostly good. A few things slip through the cracks, fine, whatever. I'm not gonna beat myself up over it.
Well, just a quick mention, history buffs, I think they're a good example of that. For people who don't know, he basically will review historical films and then kind of break down how accurate it is, but he's very much like Evan just said, where he keeps in mind that like sometimes you need to take creative liberties or things like that for the sake of the film.
Very good channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Like one of the things that we do is that we don't, all of the creative decision making is just between Evan and I. We don't let our producers see anything until it's done.
Oh, wow.
Like we don't, yeah. Like even on set, like if someone has a creative like decision, I usually say no.
I go, who are you?
Like,
Who the fuck is this guy?
It's more like I mean, unless that person is there to provide some form of accuracy to the storytelling, I usually shoot it down. Like, but now I'm reasonable. I'm not like, oh, I'm holier than thou or anything. Like, if someone does have a good idea, I'll be like,
Good
okay.
idea is good idea.
Yeah, I'll be like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. Let's do it. But for the most part, though, it's like, no, don't worry about it. We already have it. Is usually what I say. And whenever we're editing it, like, I don't really show anyone anything because it's just like. Evan and I are growing filmmakers. Like, there's a lot that we don't know, but we know enough to where we know what we want. We know what we need to do to get it done. And adding more cooks to the kitchen isn't going to do anything. If anything, it's just going to create more conflict, and you're going to start mixing other people's visions that don't have anything to do with what you're doing to the mix. And then you're going to get some, I don't know, some Frankenstein-ass looking thing. So which,
I remember who said it, but like I remember hearing somebody say like, what you're trying to do whenever you show this to somebody before it's done is you're trying to just like figure out the symptoms so that you can make the diagnosis. You don't let the patient give you the diagnosis.
yeah.
So like you need to sort of go, okay, well, what's not working and how can I solve it? That's like cohesive. Just don't worry too much about like their solutions. Just figure it out on your own. Because some person's solution might be too personal to them, and they might not be thinking big picture enough.
There have been times where I've been on other people's sets where a producer will just kind of float in and give like some half-baked idea, and the director just caves, and I'm just like, what the hell's like, what is wrong with you? You know? So like it's like this isn't your movie. Like, your job is to literally just find stuff for me. That's it. Like,
Sorry, Karen, we like you.
Like, no, I mean like
Steven didn't mean that.
I'm sorry, please. I mean, like our producers on here, like Tony and Karen, like they knew exactly what they were there to do, and they did it very well. Like,
Everybody likes Karen.
Yeah, no, Karen's great. Never had. That's why I work with the same people, because I never get any. Yeah, I never. No one that we work with is annoying. Is one of the things that I try to look for out of a crew. You don't have anyone that's off in the corner, like just. And, like, you know, it's like, it's like this isn't your movie. Like, your job is to literally just find stuff for me. That's it. Like, sorry, Karen, we like you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I mean like. I mean, like talking about something volatile and it's just gonna make people mad because they're up their own ass, and you don't have anyone wasting time or someone going like, I would have done this differently. It's like, you're there to work. Yeah. Everyone on the set knows their role, they know what they're there to do, and they get it done. And with us, like, even when we go to like investors and stuff, like we tell people like, listen, here's the deal. Like, if you're interested, give us money, cool, and we will deliver. But we're not making your movie. We're making our movie. And that's usually like how we just want to get everything out of the way and make sure everything is black and white, so there's no there's none of that like, oh well, you owe me kind of crap later. You know what I mean? Have you ever like worked with people like that before? Because like I've worked with people that have done that to me, and I'm just like, yeah, they don't fly with me, sorry. You know?
Well, I've definitely had like toxic crew members, and I've definitely had like crew members like butting in on like creative things, and it's like you're kind of like 2 months late for this, dude.
Yeah, it's I make it a point like day one to establish like, you're here to listen to me, and that's just how it's going to be. Even though everyone there's like there voluntarily, and I greatly appreciate that, but I only like to work with people who are really good at their job. And but there were some people that I hadn't worked with, like more like on the talent side, and like I was it was very, you know, I was very stern with everyone up front. I'm normally pretty lax. Like, I mean, I don't even have a filter when I'm on set. Like, I swear like a sailor, as you've probably already imagined. But I'm polite as much as I can be. But whenever someone's like stepping out of line or whatever, regardless of what it is, it's like, no, we're here to work, get it done. And I think if you're able to have control and command of your set in that way, mostly even if your set is chaotic, like Overlord was pretty chaotic, but we had a wrap on it, you know, and we were able to get it done without any additional problems, like little minor problems here and there. For the most part, most people that were there, especially some of the seasoned grips, they're like, it was fine. I was like, man, it was a shit show, and they're like, nah, dude, you're spoiled, like it was all right. I was like, okay.
Yeah, the film got done. That's not a shit show.
Yeah, like seriously. It was just like there was like 2 of the night vision props actually broke, and we had to improvise. Like one of them, like whenever I was taking it out of the box, just flew out of my hand and hit the floor and exploded.
Oh fuck!
I was like, oh cool. And I think it was like day 4. John's character Bassan, they were going down the stairs when they were gonna have like that encounter on the first floor with the dude on the ceiling. The bungees on his helmet ripped his nods in half. But thankfully, like, there were so many act of God moments that happened on this set, like where it was just convenient that it worked out. Because the first time when the nods broke, it's like, oh wait, Jansen's character's using, you know, Foundation versions or whatever. And whenever John's things got snapped in half, oh, David's character's dead, we can just use his. Like, it was just like everything was way too convenient, like going through everything. And I was like, what's gonna happen next? It was it was like the fear, like, is the condor lift outside gonna collapse? Is someone gonna like have a light fall on them or something, or like what's gonna happen?
Somebody gonna die?
Yeah, like it was like it was just, it was that extra added stress where you're like, things are going way too well right now. What's going to happen?
Yeah, we're getting way too many, like we're getting bailed out by luck.
Yeah,
a few too many times.
Like, a lot of this was made on just dumb luck, which is really fun. I mean, I still think it's funny, like looking back on it. But if, like I said earlier, to complete this tangent, it's a lot of problem solving and keeping, you know, a tight grip on your set and a chain of command, and everyone knowing their role, and and also, like, if anyone's watching this, it's like wanting to get into film and stuff. If you have someone that you're working with that is up their own ass and is like butting in on your creative decision, don't work with that person, because they're going to be annoying. Like
100%.
They're going to.
It's going to be a constant problem. It's not going to go away.
That type of person is a coattail writer. Okay. Like, I do not tolerate that. I have cut out.
They're not a team player.
Yeah, I have cut out so many coattail writers over the past couple years, and it's one of those things where it's like, you have to just understand, assume like no one's your friend and no one knows who you are, and that's how it is, because it's like that's how.
Yeah, getting legit people that are like your friends, making films with is it's a blessing like you can't understand it. It is not an easy thing to get.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in the Midwest, the middle of nowhere. It's like, dude, you live here. No one knows who the fuck you are. Like, you know.
You think that would foster an incredible amount of cooperation, but it does not.
No, I hate it when like local people have like this stupid ego and the holier than thou, where it's like, I know I'm good at my job, but I know I have room for improvement. Like, pull your head out of your ass. I don't want any of that. And don't be afraid. I would say also, don't be like, if you have, you know, your own little crew and you do your own thing, don't be afraid to voice your opinion to people. Like, that's, I wish I would have had someone tell me that a long time ago, because there have been many times where I've just been silent and it's annoying. If someone's being annoying or unacceptable, like, call them out. Like, what are they going to do? You know? So that'd be one thing that I would say, like, whenever you're working on your own set or someone else's set.
I don't know. I feel like some of the best creative teams you've ever heard of are like, they really butt heads constantly, but that's what makes the good shit. Like if you've ever fucking seen or like any documentary on Queen, like every time those guys worked, they were at each other's fucking throats, man, constantly.
Yeah, like Evan and I yell at each other a lot.
It's not like I don't like Steven or don't appreciate Steven. It's just like, no, you're trying to like really make a point, and you're doing it for the betterment of the project. So you're not going to let it go until you're convinced. And I've been happy to concede many times if I've found that I was wrong.
Like I take things like I take things personally, and I'm trying to like work on that. Like there have been times where like we'll get in a shouting match, and I'll just like I have to step away for like a few hours because I'm so mad, and then I'll just go like, "Fuck, he was right!" Like, God damn it! So, because I mean, in the product shows like like, you know, when it's like, oh, here it is, it's like, yeah, like this whole film is like basically made by like someone saying like, listen, motherfucker, or just like shouting at each other or whatever, and then poor Chad in the background just like eating popcorn watching his parents fight, you know. And it's like it's definitely, that's just how it is, because we don't like to settle. Now, I mean, of course there are things that I wish were there. I like Dutch angles. Evan doesn't.
No, I'm with Evan on that one.
I had this really cool shot in Dollhouse that had this cool camera.
It wasn't that it was a Dutch angle that I didn't like about it. There was other things.
The camera dollied in, and then it went to a Dutch angle. Like, it looked fucking cool. But he was like,
out of context, I think it looks fine.
Yeah, but he was like, no, like with the way that the entire film is stylized, like the shot stands out too much. I'm like, but it's so cool. But then I was like, but then I sent him.
Killing your darlings is so important, by the way.
Yeah, it's like the one thing that I've learned, because these are the two films that we've worked on together. We've worked on another one that that fucking blew up in our face, but the leftover money is what funded Dollhouse, so it was a blessing in disguise. But killing your darlings is definitely something that we've learned over the past year and a half or so.
For anybody who doesn't know exactly what that means, if you love an idea but it doesn't quite work with what you're doing, you have to get rid of it no matter how much you like it. And here's the thing about ideas is, like, if you don't use them, you can keep it in your arsenal for later. Yep. You can use it another time. You don't have to use it just then, even if you really like it. Sometimes it's just not the right thing to do.
Well, okay, before we wrap it up, is there anything you guys want to shout out? Any specific people you want to thank?
I want to thank me for sticking through it.
Yes.
Powerful.
I think I did a good job.
Evan all by himself up in Vancouver while we're out here. It's like Evan's basically like that Squidward meme where he's like looking out the blinds. And
bro, honestly,
you see SpongeBob and Patrick running. It's like me at home while everyone's working on SCP Overlord. It's like literally.
Everybody kept saying like, dude, you don't actually want to be here. It's hell. And I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, it would have been great for like extra input, but like, I feel like you would have like said some nasty things to someone. But yeah, I mean, like cast and crew, man, they fucking killed it. Like they all I mean, the environment was literally hell. It was hot as shit outside. The interiors were.
Just want to stress, by the way, there was not a single aspect of this production that wasn't hell.
Yeah, like it was.
Every single part of it, except for maybe the screenwriting, was a complete pain in the ass.
Yeah, it was like there. Like even after the first day, like I just sat in my room for like hours, like through the night, thinking like how are we gonna catch up for tomorrow? And the second day ended up being a 16-hour day, and they just sucked it up and they did it, and it was awesome. So the cast and crew, like even like there was even a handful of them like flew in from other states to be a part of it, and everyone worked for free. I cannot stress that everyone worked for free, and that was something that we greatly appreciated because.
If I'm gonna give a shout out to anybody, I'm gonna give a shout out to Corey.
Oh yeah, okay. So Corey, who like again, he was Jansen. He was so. Greg Wong was supposed to be his character. For those who don't know, he ran into some problems in LA a week before we were going to start shooting, and he wasn't available to be there. So Corey Haynes was a last-minute replacement, and Corey is a cop, and had to basically ask off for that entire week. This is when riots were going on, by the way.
Yeah, during the biggest event of civil unrest in America.
So whether or not he was going to be able to make it, depending if there was a riot in his city, we're rolling the dice. We had contingency plans, but still. And he finished his shift at like night at night, drove overnight to set, showed up when we were starting to start shooting, and then worked another 12-hour day wearing full gear, a real airframe, level 4 plates, didn't complain once.
Wow.
Fucking madman. Like, we couldn't believe it. We're just like, bro, are you all right? He's like, nah, I'm good. It's great. It's just like deployment. I'm like, all right, okay, cool.
Fucking insane person.
Yeah, because he was one of our advisors as well, like on the set, because he's led like 200 combat missions overseas as well.
Wow.
So
okay. Wow.
Yeah, absolute man.
Dude, you don't know what it was like. Like a week before, it's like, oh, the point man in the group is predisposed and we can't get him. Okay, well, we need somebody who has military experience and is also like able to come out for a week right now. Pretty narrow population to pick from.
I mean, you basically saved the shoot, right?
Yeah. I would also probably give like a big shout out to Corey Hinesley, our production designer, because that effigy was fucking great. Like,
shout out to Corey and Corey.
Yeah, both Corys. And Tony, my UPM, he had a broken foot the whole damn time.
Wow, man, you guys really
he was like, got all the catering together, was maintaining like all the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And like, in the rest of the cast and crew, man, like it was hard work, like the grips and my gaffer Ellis, like they fucking killed it, like dragging this.
I will say this has also been some of the smoothest production with the voice actors as well. They did their lines pretty quick. Everybody got their stuff in within under 2 weeks, I believe.
Wow.
And I was very happy to also get lines in at a timely manner from SCP Illustrated, who did his lines very well. Only had a couple errors that we did redos for, and then everything was clean. And
Skeptor 1-1.
Yeah, he said Skeptor. I thought it was really funny he said that. And but like I didn't have to wait. It's like, oh, like I'm sure he's doing shit. So it's like, and I was happy that he wanted to be involved, because it's like you can't sort of avoid the hierarchy of YouTube, specifically the sub count hierarchy, because every time you're gonna approach somebody who's a bigger YouTuber than you, it's like, do you actually want to work with me? Because I don't have as many subs as you. And so when they're actually down to like work with you, it's always awesome.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy.
Yeah, like Drew, he like volunteers, like, can I be in your next one? Or like, yeah.
I think I asked him. I was like, hey, you want to be in the next one? He's like, yep.
He's like, absolutely.
But I think he might have mentioned like, hey, if you're doing this again. Yeah, I don't remember how that went exactly.
I remember when he got to set, like he was so excited to be there. He's just, dude, thanks for calling me out. I'm like, I should be thanking you for being here for us. But like, coolest dude ever. Like, he's just like a guy, which is great.
A lot of YouTubers would have brought their fucking ego to set. I tell you what. Drew did not do that. He did everything he was supposed to do, and he did not complain.
But as for me though, I usually post a lot of updates, especially for anything that Evan and I are working on my Instagram. So if you want to follow me at Retro Digital Media, you can keep up with the stuff that we do there.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Again, huge congratulations, considering everything you had against you guys, and you still pulled it off. Like, round of applause.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for having us. Like, it was a lot of fun. I've also just been really wanting to come on after I saw your guys' the first thing you did like a few months ago.
Yeah,
I want to be in one.
The circle's complete. Well, make another film and then you can come back on, okay? No,
no, definitely, yeah, absolutely. Be like, hey, dude, what's up?
Sweet. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.